Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this here is our 17.1 video. This should be for Tuesday, March 31st. Yesterday, you should have read Chapter 17, Section 1, and you should have completed the discussion board. If you have not done that, please make sure you do that. I want to make sure you guys get credit for doing all this work during this e-learning. All right, so here we go with the geography of Europe. First, I want to kind of do is talk about building background a little bit. This is how your section started out also. The physical features of Europe is what this presentation is going to be about. It's not very long, so it shouldn't take much to do this. Some of the things that we're going to focus on, though, are the rivers, the landforms, and the climate. Okay, and we're going to and we want to talk about how the physical features shape the people's lives of this area of Europe that we're going to be talking about. Okay, so we'll hit each of these as we go through this presentation. All right, some of the physical features of Europe. One thing we need to know, these are our two key terms of this section. Well, this is one of our key terms, I should say, Eurasia. And that's this area right here. Okay, Eurasia is kind of taking the continent of Europe along here and parts of the continent of Asia together, and it's one huge landmass. And then what kind of separates the two continents then? What kind of gives Europe over here, you have a little bit of Asia and Europe combined, but then you fully go to Asia, is the Ural Mountains. Okay, and I want you to key in on this map. We're going to use this map in some of the other slides also. All right, so what I want to talk about are landforms and waterways. So of course, topography is a key term. So you have your Eurasia and topography. Topography is going to be a key term, and topography really is just basically this type of map right here, a topographical map. What it does is it shows shape and elevation. This little key down here would show you the elevation. The colors kind of determine the elevation. So as you get more to this brown and reddish color, that just means that area of land is much higher than sea level. Sea level is where everything starts out, and then as you go up in scale and things like that, that's your elevation level. And that's what a topographic map would show you. So of course you can see there's quite a few mountain ranges as a part of this map right here. But notice where these mountain ranges are located. They're primarily located down here in the southern parts of Europe. Yes, you have some mountains and much higher elevation here in the middle parts, some mountains right here in Scandinavia, but for the most part, most of the mountains are located down here in the southern region. Now right here is Italy, this would be Rome. So for this Middle Ages unit, most of what we'll be talking about is just kind of in this area here. So please key in on that. You get going over to here and you're going to be getting to Constantinople right in here and things like that. All right, north of these mountain ranges, of course, is the Northern European Plain. And this area here, as you can see, is a flatter area. This is going to be much more likely used for farmland and stuff like that. But do know, as we get going further north and north and north, we're going to get colder and colder, shorter growing seasons also. But this Northern European plain had a lot of forest on it also, especially during this time of the Middle Ages, a lot of forested land, forest areas and things like that. There's also many rivers in this area. You can see these rivers along here. There's going to be a lot more rivers along this Northern European plain than there's going to be down here in these mountainous regions. And these rivers are going to flow out of these mountains to the north, to the Atlantic Ocean, the North Sea, the Baltic Sea, and places like that. Another thing to key in on this here for landforms are the jagged edges, coastline, things like that, but also the peninsulas. Lots of peninsulas in this area. You have the Iberian Peninsula, the Italian Peninsula. This here is known as the Balkan Peninsula with Greece right in here. You have the Scandinavian Peninsula. Some of the mountain ranges, of course, are the Alps Mountains. This here, remember from the Roman unit, was the Apennines or the Apennines Mountains. You have the Pyrenees right here that kind of separate France and Spain. Here are the Caucasus Mountains. So lots of different mountains, especially down here in the southern area. But these peninsulas, this one right here, the Scandinavian Peninsula, as it juts out here into the North Sea, the Iberian Peninsula, which makes up Spain and Portugal. So pretty cool landforms, lots of different landforms along this area that we're going to be talking about. All right, climate and vegetation. Okay, of course, as you get going farther north, things are going to change, get colder, just like they do here in the United States. Remember, we'll start down here in Southern Europe. Remember how they, when we did the Roman unit, it said that Rome was pretty similar to like southern parts of California. So of course it's going to be warm, it's going to be sunny, things like that. But it also means there's kind of a lack of rainfall, precipitation. So while they're there in their climate, the vegetation, so the plants that can grow there, these plants need to be able to be hardy, which means they don't need much rainfall. So shrubs, trees that aren't going to need much rain, the crops that are going to be growing, they're going to be crops that, yes, you'll either have to irrigate or they're going to be able to grow without much rain. And that's all across this area along here, right? Northern Europe, as you get up in here into the northern European plain, it's going to be much milder, cooler, wetter. Could be similar to like what we're experiencing right now in Nebraska with your 50-degree weather, sometimes drizzly, foggy, stuff like that. But of course, there will be freezing winters along here, just like we have in the United States, especially in the Midwest. And then we get further up north here into Scandinavia, along this largest peninsula of this Eurasia landmass. This up here, freezing weather, snow dominates it maybe 10 out of the 12 months, if not even longer. Some areas will never see anything but snow along here because, as you can see, you're getting closer to the Arctic Ocean. A few plants are going to be along here. There's just not going to be much that you can grow in these areas. So you're going to have a different lifestyle. It's not going to be as much farming. You're going to look to the ocean, to the seas, to the waterways, things like that for your livelihood. All right, so geography, of course, is going to shape life. And as you can see here, it plays a big role in, how you live your life. So down here in this southern area, farmers, let's say in Italy or Greece, are growing crops like olives and grapes. Down here, this would be more in the middle European plain. As you can see, it's along the Rhine River in Germany. You're going to see farming and vegetation and things like that. But here would be a Scandinavian area. So something like Norway, Sweden, Finland, where you can just see it might be snowy along here year round. So they're going to be more here in the water and living their life on the water. But this type of geography is going to shape and influence where and how people live. It's going to influence what crops are grown and where the cities develop. So in Southern Europe, most of the people will live, of course, along the coastal plains. So right there along maybe the Mediterranean Sea and some of the other seas that were across there in the Gulfs. Some will live in these river valleys like the Tiber River as it comes up out of the Mediterranean. You'll get Rome coming up and being built along there. Growing grapes and olives, raising goats and sheep up in all those mountains that we looked at. Lots of peninsulas mean that people are going to live along the coast. So think about that Greek area where it was just all these little peninsulas jutting out into the waters. But this leads to most of the people along Southern Europe being excellent traders, getting out on their boats and ships and trading with other regions along the Mediterranean and things like that. So they're going to be very good on the sea. Seafarers, I guess is what you would call them. And then as you move further north, life is just going to change a little bit. People are going to live much further away from the oceans, but they're still going to have access to those oceans because they have a lot more rivers, especially deep rivers that they can use with their boats and things like that to travel back and forth. And these rivers really play a big role, just like they will here in our country, like the Missouri River. We don't have access to the Gulf of Mexico or the Atlantic Ocean, things like that. But if we get onto the Missouri River, we could go all the way down to the Gulf. Just like the same thing with the Rhine River would eventually take you all the way out to the North Sea, and you could get to the Atlantic and other places. And, these towns will develop along these rivers because that water meant life and things like that. But it was also used for transportation and protection. You should have read about Paris. Paris was a city that it was initially built on an island inside or in a river, and they used that to protect themselves from outside invaders. It was much more difficult to attack Paris when it was very small because it was located on that river. Now, of course, today it's so large that you would never even know that. And as there was lots of farm fields out here and things like that away from the rivers. They could grow various crops with the fertile soil. It was flat land, which makes it ideal for farming, but it also was easily invaded then. So, like when those Visigoths and barbarians and Vandals and others invaded when this was part of the Roman Empire, this was the area they were invading up there in northern Europe. It was just much easier for them to invade. They didn't have to cross mountains and things like that. So that flat land, that's where a lot of those invasions occurred that eventually leads to the downfall of Rome. This here image, of course, is that same one with the Scandinavia. As you can see, most of the people are going to live along the coastline here in Scandinavia. Very few people live in these countries. They're just not going to support much of a population, and they will use the sea as their resource for everything that they need. All right, that's the last slide for this one. Hopefully, you're able to take the quiz and get your answers from this. If you're not able to get it from this presentation, please look in the book also for the answers for the quiz. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.